This is Carolina Business Review. Major support provided by High Point University, the premier life skills university focused on preparing students for the world as it is going to be. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Well, we are finding our stride now as we transition from all business, all busy, to more of a summer fun kind of vibe schedule for sure. Welcome back, and thank you for supporting the most widely watched and the longest running dialogue on Carolina business, policy, and public affairs. We will restart our weekly confab about those issues that matter most here in the region of the Carolinas, and we engage our expert panel. We begin right now.
Major funding also by Foundation for the Carolinas, a catalyst for philanthropy and driver of civic engagement, helping individuals, nonprofits, and companies bring their charitable visions to life. Truliant Federal Credit Union, proudly serving the Carolinas since 1952 by focusing on what truly matters, our members' financial success. Welcome to Brighter Banking. And Martin Marietta, a leading provider of natural resource-based building materials, providing the foundation on which our communities improve and grow. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Anna Beavon Gravely from Restless Politico, Matt Martin of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, and Carl Blackstone of the Greater Columbia Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, welcome to our program. Happy summer, grad season. We got it going on, and everybody's smiling. There's there's a summer vibe going on, right?
For sure.
Vacations. Thank you all for coming. Carl, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
And even though this announcement was in North Carolina, it does highlight the idea that economic development still has the wind at its back, no doubt. It's like a prehistoric stone rolling downhill. Amazon announced a $10 billion project now in North Carolina. It's 500 jobs. It's not a tremendous amount of jobs, but I mean, that highlights the Apple, the Boeing, the Scout Motors, et cetera, et cetera. These mega elephant projects, are there more to come?
I think on the data side, yes. Whether or not, with all the things going on in D.C. right now, I'm not sure. I know they're trying to get more onshoring, but I don't know if we're going to see the big manufacturing right now. But I think the data centers, there's still opportunity there. We see Charlotte, obviously Raleigh, the Triangle got the big one this week. Spartanburg got one a couple months ago. Yeah. Meta's building one right south of Columbia. Data centers and the need for, with the explosion of AI, you've got to have the back end of that, and those are the data centers. And so I think we're in a prime spot for that.
Does policy support economic development incentives when you've got so many wins, or is that what governors point to and say, this is because we have good incentives?
Incentives definitely get top line, top billing for basically anything they can. Incentives are sort of the concept of incentives, sort of like the Kraken coming up and going to swallow anything that is around it. They're going to look for that win. Elected officials, no matter what level, want to win. And when you have big companies come in, whether they're creating 5 jobs or 5,000 jobs, the name is what matters most. I would argue that we should probably look at like the number of businesses that get started and that can thrive in a place instead of giving credit to the big name with a small number of jobs.
Yeah, Matt, Dr. Martin, our central banker here, do the numbers work? Does the finance work on that kind of a big announcement?
So I think the point that the overall picture, that you might want to take a look at that, but I think it matters for communities like Richland County. I haven't spent a lot of time there.
Richland County, North Carolina or South Carolina, which has some wins to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, where this Amazon facility is going, I think the county population's 41,000. There's probably no more than 20,000 jobs in the county. So 500 decent paying jobs matter for that county. And I've been to some of these counties recently adjacent where they still talk about the impacts of NAFTA, where NAFTA took away several large factories and they've never recovered from that. So I think the distribution of where these goes matters quite a bit.
I agree with that.
In places like Georgetown County in Georgetown, when there was a final closing of a mill in January and it kind of got lost in the mix, that places like that are looking to restart, and I'm sure they will, but...
Rural, I mean, this goes back to, I mean, the political fights are happening, the policy issues at the State House today seem to be more divided between rural and urban. And this is the same on the economic development side. These rural counties truly need the economic development. And so a data center in a rural county could, I mean, be a huge win for them. I think where they go is important. Do they get the same type of incentives? That's a good policy question for our legislature to discuss, because they do. There's such an enormous amount of impact on the front end, capital cost, but very low on the labor side.
Anna Beavon, so are the lines being drawn along rural and urban instead of politics as they've been, or is it the same?
I'm going to say it goes down to the issue, which is like the most political answer ever. But to your point about the rural communities really needing economic development, totally. Everyone agrees with that. Rural, it matters so much for smaller counties, the number of jobs that are created, also the income level of those jobs and where they're hired, because it has a ripple effect around the community. They'll go to the local coffee shop, they'll shop at the little bakery. All of those things are true because that's human behavior. However, we're seeing that incentives don't necessarily go to rural counties, which is where everyone agrees. We agree that rural counties should have incentives, but you see like the Triangle, Raleigh-Durham Triangle area getting a lot, Charlotte getting a lot. And so they end up swallowing up a lot of these really big incentive wins that elected officials and specifically governor's offices claim as big wins or as credit or like, hey, this thing works, that some people are skeptical about, but it's not going to the rural communities that need it the most.
Yeah, speaking of jobs, at the taping of this program, at least, Matt, we got another jobs number. We got a revision from a previous. Unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, the jobs number for May was decent, roughly 140,000, but there were significant 90,000 plus revisions from the months before.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning they get more information, they get more solid data, and they have to go back and say, you know, we thought we had this number of jobs, but we're going to revise it down. Usually it's the latter part of the month they fill that in.
But it's gone down after the revision.
It's gone down. The previous months went down after the revision. So the net gain this month was maybe about 50,000. But I think that's probably reflective of what I'm hearing on the ground, right? So we're in this low hire, low fire environment.
That's right.
A lot of firms post-COVID race to get up to speed. A lot of them are much more comfortable with where their workforce is. They're sort of filling in nooks and crannies, but they're not in any mood to really hire. So they might have some hiring freezes, being conscious of headcount because of the uncertainty that in the policy environment, right? Particularly if you're tariff exposed, you're gonna be careful about your expenditures. I don't hear much about layoffs yet. I think a lot of firms have plans that if they need to, but their baseline is, we think the tariff thing will settle down in the back half of the year and we think we'll be okay, so we're going to hold on to our staff for now.
Is your gut they're going to be layoffs?
I think there are a lot of folks that are hedging bets right now. If they have an opening, they're keeping it open. They're not hiring with the thought that we're going to see how this plays out. I mean, the uncertainty, we had this last year, right, with the election. There was a lot of uncertainty around the election. Now we're back to this level of uncertainty, which is not good for the markets, but it is from a hiring. They're saying, well, we're doing okay right now. We're just going to hold off unless it's a seasonal job that you got to have somebody. For the most part, our members are saying, we're just going to wait and see.
Okay. You know, a final word, since we're talking about talent and jobs. Talent and jobs, as you well know, Anna Beavon. So you got talent, you got energy. Both of those elements are needed for economic development. In North Carolina, former Commerce Secretary Michelle Baker Saunders, did I get that right? Michelle Saunders. I'm sorry, I should know that. That's terrible. But she, along with current Secretary Leah Lilly, both said, and Harry Lightsey in South Carolina, Commerce Secretary, both say that we've got an energy crisis. Now, they've been saying that. I'm saying it that way because that there's not enough energy to provide for economic development announcements like huge data centers, like Amazon just announced. Where do we hit the tipping point on that?
Gosh, if I knew that, I would be a bazillionaire or a magician. However, I think that there are a lot of situations that are at a crisis level. When we look at infrastructure, energy, I think no issue exists in a vacuum. And I've said that before. I feel like that's something that I get to say a lot on the show as somebody who represents all political views at this point.
We'll get you a T-shirt that says that.
Thank you. That would be really great. Yeah, I'd love that. But no issue exists in a vacuum, and energy and infrastructure and even education and economic development, all of those are feeding into each other. And so if we're in one crisis, one issue has a crisis, the other one is there too. And it's a matter of what is going to look good to pass immediately, to go after immediately, and then how feasible is it to get it done in a short period of time.
Energy distribution and development, is that going to be a crisis? I mean, Harry Lightsey said it's a crisis.
It's huge. And so we just passed an energy bill in South Carolina. The governor just signed it. General Assembly, that was their number one priority for the beginning of the session. It does allow a couple things. One, they're building new capacity, new generation down in Low Country, Santee Cooper is. It also allows, it gives some certainty in the regulatory process that they're going down this path that they can get to a finished product sooner. So that's good. We are at a crisis situation, both in new energy, baseload energy, because the number of people that moved in, number of data centers, number of new manufacturing that we have just not kept up in South Carolina. So we need it, but we also need natural gas as well. We've got to increase some pipelines, and we need new distribution lines.
Is there Jimmy Staten from Santee Cooper was on the program a few months ago talking about that they're getting bids, Santee Cooper's getting bids to restart the VC Sumner plants that were mothballed for a lot of reasons we're not going to get into, but to restart those nukes is not an inexpensive proposition. Right. Is it losing momentum? Because he was sounding pretty open about it. Wouldn't a nuke fill a huge gap?
Oh, it would be tremendous. And in this case, there were two. One that was 40% complete and one was 25% complete. So to get those up to fully operational would be huge. The cost of natural gas now is so inexpensive, so building a natural gas plant combined with some batteries would be cheaper than building a nuke. But for future baseload needs, nuclear would be phenomenal. The success that they've had in beginning these conversations, I think 84 companies expressed some interest. There are a bunch of NDAs, 60-odd number of companies have signed NDAs supposedly to continue the conversation of starting those nukes again. But we'll have to see how it balances out on a balance sheet. That's going to be the question mark. We don't really know what the total cost will be to bring those back online.
Matt, your board for the Federal Reserve in the Carolinas comprises a lot of people in a lot of industries. What do you hear about the energy challenges?
Similar to what my fellow panelists have talked about, I think this is solvable, right? I mean, we're talking about regulatory and administrative processes and the trade-offs involved, right? You want to have safety, you want to have all those things, but are you overburdening the process when you need the energy, right? And having sort of a robust base of different sources of energy. The natural gas thing is interesting. I mean, that goes back to the shale revolution, right? So since then, I can remember when natural gas was over $10, right? And we were all screaming about that. It's abundant and it's cheap, so maybe that's the near-term solution, but I think the time has come to think about those trade-offs on the regulatory side, because we can fix it. We can develop more energy.
Is the appetite for public policy, those that make public policy, like leadership in North Carolina, for alternate means of energy, is that waning quite a bit? Or is it going away? Would they like to kind of wipe off any incentives for wind or solar and let them develop naturally if they do, but not subsidize that any longer?
No. I say that those incentives are still holding pretty strong. their lobbying presence at the General Assembly for alternative energy is very deep. Their bench is deep, specifically when it comes to solar energy. However, the desire to fix a crisis certainly exists without a doubt, and we've got Duke Energy working on some stuff. They're a powerhouse in North Carolina, and every year they bring forward legislation. And this year they're moving through some pretty aggressive legislation.
But go ahead.
Well, I'm actually just curious for both of you, if the first time one of either North Carolina or South Carolina loses an economic development project and they say we don't have the energy to support it, does that spark a response?
Oh yeah.
1,000%.
Has that come
Yeah.
up? Has that come up to say, we're worried about your energy delivery?
In parts of our state, yes, it's an issue, and they're not going to talk about it publicly, right?
Definitely not publicly.
No.
But that is an issue.
Are they whistling past the graveyard about something like this? Is that too dramatic?
I think there are some companies that use a tremendous amount of energy, and we've had to pass on bidding for those projects.
Knowing that you wouldn't make the short list.
Right.
Okay. All right. Did you have something? Did I just
No,
shut you down
I
there?
don't know. No,
Yeah,
that's a great question. I'm not privy to those conversations, unfortunately.
But what we're talking about is two different. I mean, the solar and the wind are not base load, and so they cannot do what we need. They're great to subsidize what you already have, but the cost is inefficient as it relates to base load. So we really have got to cut it down and say, all right, what do we have to have? What do we need over the next 10 to 20 years? Our population, both states have just grown exponentially. So that's why we need this new base load, plus the manufacturing. We'll subsidize whatever we can with the energy sources of the sun and the wind.
The additional question that I have is, so if we look at, you mentioned earlier, like the reliance on AI and how that's growing and how that is really permeating all of our lives. I've never had more conversations with ChatGPT than I have in the last 3 months. And so when you have other states looking at Bitcoin reserve for their state, Bitcoin is, you have to mine Bitcoin.
Right.
That's a lot of energy.
Right.
And so when you have, they're looking at it as
an industry to develop?
Well, I would say that might be aggressive terms.
Yeah.
But they're looking at creating state reserves with Bitcoin because it is the hardest money we have. And so as it's sweeping across the country, this conversation about hey, let's get involved in Bitcoin. I know this is totally not where you wanted to go today.
No, but it's a good point. And you're right. Don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But Matt, so the Fed, you're looking at, because we've had these conversations, is the Fed ever going to, it's sanctions probably too strong, but maybe sanction or bless some cyber?
Well, that's not that's a different regulatory regime. What we have said is for now, we're not interested in a central bank digital currency. So we're not going to put one out ourselves anytime in the near future. That may change down the road based on analysis. The shorthand that I'd put on this in my own words is, we already have a digital dollar, right? All of us have digital dollars in our bank accounts. There's really not a use case need that's really screaming.
So that's the inference of a central banker saying, what would you need a Bitcoin? Why do you need to do a transaction that's not seen by other people?
And there may be use cases there. And the thing we'll have to pay attention to, it's another payment channel. Does it have any implications for our payment systems? And equally important for the transmission of monetary policy. Those are the things we'll have to think about.
Yeah, of course, it's a much bigger dialogue, but thanks for bringing it up.
Sorry, millennial here.
That's good, we need that. We've got a few minutes left, but I want to zoom back out and talk about state budgets for a second. South Carolina completed their budget. Seems like a lot of smiles all the way around the State House. The governor was happy.
Everybody was happy.
Bunch of wins on top of the fact, and I was a little surprised that there is $1 billion surplus again.
Right, combination of one-time monies and recurring dollars. So revenues were continuing to be up. So total of $1 billion.
With tax cuts.
With
That's
small
amazing.
cut in income tax, and a larger conversation coming next year on income taxes. The House did pass a larger bill to lower the income tax well down to be more competitive in the Southeast. The Senate did not take that up. so they'll take that up and when they come back in January. But the money's been flowing in. Again, I think that's just if you continue to look at the number of people moving to the state.
In migration?
In migration.
Bailing out some
That's right.
maybe decisions we might regret later. So North Carolina, not quite the rosy scenario that may be a budget shortfall?
Well, our budget scenario is very rarely rosy. We have a lot of, it's always down to the wire between the House and the Senate.
Do you think there will be a budget shortfall, or do you think there'll be a budget surplus?
I think we're going to have a surplus.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think we'll have a surplus.
Does that number start with a B?
No.
Okay.
No. It's going to be. It'll be small.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not claiming that we're going to like really wave the flag on that, but I do think that the main sticking point between the House and the Senate in North Carolina is what to do about taxes.
Okay, 5 minutes left. So we could go down that. I want to expand a little bit in transportation infrastructure because it's another one of those very important things that we need for an economy to be healthy, and certainly that is the case in North and South Carolina. Anna, and I'm gonna stay with you on this because you were late to our taping.
I was.
Because you got caught in traffic, which it happens. We've all done it. And when I asked you what part of I-85 did you get caught on, you said at the beginning and at the end, which is the entire between Raleigh and Charlotte.
Right.
Yeah, I know we're kidding about this, but we're kind of not kidding about this.
Right.
Are we getting to the point now where we are choking more so every day, all the time on our traffic and infrastructure? And here's a compound question. And with all of these economic development announcements, so economic development is needing transportation to happen, but will the revenue from economic development bail out the cost for transportation?
No. Fast answer, no.
No.
Short answer, huh?
Yeah,
You
very.
want to think about that before you answer?
No. So I said I just said it
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to bail it out by any means. I think that incentive money that comes, incentive money indirectly coming from corporations coming into an area, putting increased pressure on roads and traffic of people who live there normally. That money is already sort of earmarked in people's minds toward local economy growth, because that was the reason for doing it. It wasn't, hey, we've got some traffic problems, let's bring in Apple.
To help us
Their
solve
money
that.
will help us solve this
that
problem.
doesn't happen, no.
That's nobody wants to talk about
Well,
roads.
except in the Scout situation, when they announced the Scout, part of the incentive package, including a new overpass and rail lines and all that. That
Is
was
that
a part.
paid for by Scout?
It's paid for by the state, but that was part of the incentive package. Was to create a new exit.
Will the revenue from Scout?
That was not. That was part of the expense of the
Okay.
state, part of the enhanced package.
But will that
So
whole
it sort of
will the-
sweetens the pot.
Correct, but we have
Yeah.
to start thinking about
Yeah.
the impact of all these things and do it on the front end, because it will never pay for it out on the back end.
Yes.
Right? That's all goes to schools, all the local governments. She's 100% right on that.
Yeah. Matt, does the math work for transportation and infrastructure beyond what we're talking about now?
Yeah, my bumper stickers, particularly within a metro area, transportation is what you talk about when you mess up housing policy. So we need more housing, and we need it where the jobs are to help alleviate current and future congestion, that sort of thing, right? So if the only affordable housing for a family is 30 miles outside of town, you put that household on the road to work for a lot longer miles, right?
But not to be devil's advocate, but if you have a high-speed rail or some type of light rail going out that corridor, doesn't that make housing all of a sudden affordable 30 miles outside of it?
It does, and Charlotte's got some of that, but not. There aren't. I think Charlotte's the only metropolitan area in the two-state region where
light
that
rail
works,
being
right?
that-
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
I was going
about
to say Matt needs a T-shirt. Of
Yeah.
no issue exists in a vacuum. So when you make that run, make sure you include one for Matt.
Thank you.
So this final thing, we do have to wrap it up. We think about Scout being developed along the I-77, not just corridor, but absolutely corridor in Blythewood and North Columbia. I mean, that's going to be a lot of congestion.
A lot of congestion, which it created the opportunity to build a new interchange exit for Scout
But it doesn't increase the size of the interstate between Charlotte and Columbia.
No, and they're not even, they just awarded, the DOT in South Carolina awarded their largest contract ever this week, and that was to widen 95 from Savannah up towards Hilton Head. But
How long has that been coming?
Oh,
20 plus.
Plus,
Gotta be
absolutely.
years.
So
Yeah,
we're so far behind, and so there is there'll be a big push this year, real quickly, to do a DOT modernization plan through the General Assembly next year. Where do we need to be?
Yeah, okay, that's the last word, thank you. Really, last word is, does the Fed allow facial hair? No?
Nobody's giving me grief about it.
Well, Tom Barkin's going to be on. You know I'm going to have to ask. Anyway, I'm kidding. Thanks, Matt, for being on here. Anna Beavon, I'm sorry you got stuck in traffic, but we always appreciate
So
your
happy
perseverance.
to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Carl. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Good to see you, too.
Thank you all. Until next week, I'm Chris William, and here we are in the summer. We certainly hope that you're going to have a good summer, full of good family stuff, because we do live in a wonderful place. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Hope all your business is good. Good night.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Martin Marietta, Truliant Federal Credit Union, Foundation for the Carolinas, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, High Point University, and by viewers like you. Thank you.